I was diving into the copycat phenomenon with suicide survivors. And it was the same exact thing you said, Robin. If someone you know has done it, it now becomes a viable option for you on a subconscious level, especially if you're in pain. Welcome back to Women Seeking Wholeness, the podcast for women who long to feel, express, and be who they truly are, here and now, body and soul. In this second episode, I continue the discussion with my sisters, Taunia and Robin, further exploring how some of the family patterning that we have inherited, both situationally and genetically, has been able to be transformed through largely the discovery of our passion and some of the natural tools that we have happened upon. So I hope that for those of you who may have similar family patterning, you'll be able to glean some hope and some relatability around what we've experienced as a family, and that it can be helpful in your journey. I think I was the first sister that attempted. Here I am, and Taunia was diagnosed bipolar. Shawna was diagnosed bipolar. Although I'd never been diagnosed bipolar, and I was in the middle of these two sisters who I think high creatives, highly talented, and that's part of why people get diagnosed sometimes with bipolar, because they have these really high artistic, bursts of creativity, and they're very charismatic oftentimes, and then they'll just crash with depression. I never had that. Mine was always just kind of an undercurrent of sadness. And when I got the dysthymia, my practitioner said, my psychiatrist said, "You've had this probably since you were a little girl and you just didn't know it. You thought it was normal." And even though, Taunia, you had your diagnosis rescinded with bipolar, we'll get to that later. But I just remember I knew that what I was taking probably was not going to kill me. I mean, it was my antidepressants. And I actually called my really good friend Brian and told him what I'd done, and he got in his car and drove me to the hospital. So I wasn't serious. You get to where you just don't know what to do. You just want to be out of pain, and you also want to hold up your hand and go, "I am hurting, and no one's helping me. No one can help me."
Right.
And so, Taunia, I remember you got in my face, and it really affected me. You were like, "This is never going to happen again." There was like a literal family intervention. I had my stomach pumped twice in a 48-hour period. And it was kind of my line in the sand, because I literally think I chose. I remember standing in front of a mirror and going, "I'm not going to live like this." Just like Taunia, you kind of had that moment of, you don't have to live like this when you were going through your abuse. It was the same for me. It was a demarcation. It was a point in my journey of life where I'm like, nope, this is not going to be, nope. And this is before Shawna really went down her road.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to put that out there, lest I paint, all of my sisters of bipolar and whatever. I was the first sister who was suicidal to the point of making an attempt.
Right.
So let's come back to Shawna. I want to give a little snapshot of her history before we kind of round this out. And we could just go on and on. There's a lot of drama. But the thing with Shawna is I would have really long conversations with her husband. He would sit and cry on our couch. His name's David, about not knowing how to help her. And as I mentioned previously, she had been in and out, and she had pretty much exhausted the family's resources with being able to get coverage for addiction recovery and other things.
But I do want to point out a lot of the catalyst for a lot of this was her suffering from postpartum. That kind of was what would set it off in these seasons. After she would have a baby, that would be kind of the catalyst to addictive behaviors, because she was self-medicating.
Yes.
Good point.
And 5 children. I mean, her 5th child was adopted, but it was still a pretty long road to get to adopt her youngest. And also, I remember she had electroconvulsive shock therapy, which was kind of more of a controversial way, but she was so just so depressed. and also running a music school out of her home. Super creative. One of the reasons she would stop taking some of the medications that she was taking was and I'm just thinking of Depakote being one of them, that she told me, I can't take this because I'm not me. All of my musical talent goes away. And so sometimes there's a payoff for discontinuing these medications. Yeah, they might be life-saving, but not only do they numb the pain, they also numb the joy and the creativity. And that's, it's almost like she would rather die than be in that numbed out sort of. And I know, Taunia, you have mentioned to me before that you experience states of medical induced, not medical, but medicine induced amnesia, right? Where you were so medicated that you don't remember things.
I remember going to Disneyland, with you and your family, and looking at those pictures and going, oh my gosh, I don't even remember that trip. Like only small portions of it. But I'd look at the pictures, don't remember that, don't remember that, don't remember that.
Mm.
And since we're talking about family patterning, I do think it's worth pointing out that, especially the women in our family, we are action people. So, like our mom, for example, even though she was suffering with all that, I mean, she would be in bed, but it would be after, how many days worth of serving somebody or working on a project for the family or doing something for church or community or whatever. And then it was a crash. Right. And that plays out with Shawna. She would have, she's running her music school out of her home while she's also dealing with this postpartum depression. But that's also a family pattern as well as, so the aspect of anything that would cause us to stop in itself was depressing, in itself was debilitating.
Yes. And
good point.
Some of that is cultural. It's like the drive to be perfect and to look to give the illusion that you have the perfect family or the perfect body or whatever. And that's pretty common with a lot of women who are trying so hard to raise a family or to establish themselves in the world. It's very pervasive. And what's interesting about Shawna's life, because she and I were 2 years apart, and we because we were living in the same community, we had, and our kids were the same ages and best friends. We really were together a lot. The last memory I have of her was I asked her to come over and watch my kids while I ran a quick errand. And she was playing the piano in my home. That was music was her panacea. It was her solace and it was her gift. And I remember her saying that her ultimate goal was to create some kind of a music healing or a music therapy program. And that's the last time I saw her was when she was playing music in my home. The last time I talked to her was the morning that she left. She asked me to watch her kids because she had an appointment in Salt Lake. Salt Lake is where she ultimately chose to end her life. There's some debate within the family and within ourselves. I think I don't think when she left, she was going to kill herself. I think she just needed to get away. And then while she was away, she was like, I can't go back. She went and bought deodorant. They found a receipt in the van that she was driving where she had gone to Walmart to buy deodorant that night. So I'm like, I don't think, that in my mind, if I was a detective and trying to put that together, I would say this was spontaneous. She'd had her medication with her that she normally takes anyway, and she just took too much. And the note that she left was on the Ramada in stationery. I know her enough to know that she would have thought out a longer letter with more, I guess, guidance or love towards each of her kids, something like that. I think when she left, what do you guys? I know we have.
I agree. I feel like she would have. I think when she left that message, she was kind of already incapacitated to a degree. I think if she was really had chosen to do that, she would have reached out in the letter to each of her children with a special message or something. I don't know that it was a well thought out plan.
Yeah, it's almost like she wanted to kill the pain.
And I remember, Taunia, you had more of a spiritual dream or experience or something that you felt like she was coming through to share with you. She didn't really want to die. She didn't really want to leave her kids.
Yeah, she was, the sensation, or not sensation, the perception I had around it was she was attempting to kill the pain, not to kill herself.
And that she was trying to get back into her body, like she was hovering over her body, trying to get back in. Like, I didn't really want to do that.
Yeah. And then at that point, her body wasn't going to cooperate. She closed that door with the amount of drugs that she took. But it was more of let me have a respite from this pain than actually ending her journey on this earth. There was still enough fight in her that would have found that second wind.
Right.
But then it was too late.
She was on almost a dozen medications for the management of her mental health. And there were so many side effects. I think we could all agree that the real Shawna was not in the driver's seat. The real Shawna that we know and love was vivacious and friendly and didn't know a stranger and didn't judge people. There were so many people from all walks of life that came to her funeral. And I remember one in particular was a young man who, at her viewing the night before, had scribbled a little note and put it in her casket, and it just said, "Why, Shawna, why?" And he had been in her addiction recovery program with her. Even probably the hardest moment of my life, I honestly can't think of anything harder that I've had to do or more challenging that I've had to do, was the night that we dressed her body in the funeral home.
It was her, but not her.
I remember we were all like holding on to each other. And Mom.
Out of body experience almost.
Yeah.
I remember just even walking in the room and seeing her body there and just like it not computing that she was gone.
Yeah. I almost didn't want to witness that she was really dead. Like, some part of me in my mind was that somehow she was still living. And so here is this body that looks like my sister, and yet at the same time, a sense of she's gone.
Right.
How do you process that?
I was talking with her in my mind, and I think we were all feeling her just.
She was there.
She was just.
Her spirit was so there, because I remember we were laughing about
her hair or something. Like we
all kind of felt like she was trying to make, not light, but that she was
just wanting us to know her personality was there.
Yeah, it was there, and we felt that. I think for me, I remember I couldn't even touch her. It was hard for me to do that because it just was her, and it wasn't her, and I could not calibrate that. I could not process that. But I think for me, we had grieved so much, and at her viewing, I was, as is typical for most funerals, we were kind of helping other people that were now processing it, coming through the line and things like that. But I remember being at the graveside, and when they shut the lid, and they were saying,
actually, they did that. They shut the casket before the funeral.
That's right.
Yeah, that's when I fell apart.
And I was just like, that's the last time I'm going to see my sister in this life. Like, that was really, really crazy. And it was kind of the same at the same time. I mean, because I was pregnant with my first. I had been mulling over in a way, like, when is my turn? Because at that point that I didn't see any other way out. Like, this is going to hit me like it's hit every one of the women in my family. But there was this sense of like, I am refusing for this to continue. Like, this is taking my family, this depression, this addiction, and it's playing out in so many different ways. And having had a little brother with that,
at that point, our 2 brothers were struggling with addiction. Our 3 brothers, honestly.
But it was so crazy that this is my sister. This is my sister, and she is gone. And what is this going to look like for me now? And it was so much, but then it was just kind of like within those couple of days, I remember as sisters and mom, we were like, no, this is not happening. This is not going to happen. I'm not passing this to my babies. Like, it was like a defiant mother bear. No.
She was a catalyst. That act, I'm going to say that act was a catalyst. I would never condone it, but I'm just saying she chose the act, and it was a catalyst for Robin, what I heard you say. Cherie, I know it was a catalyst for you, and it was for me. I did not even think. I never had a plan to end my life. I just struggled to find joy in my life and really prayed to die quite frequently. Just take me home. But I never had really made the decision of this is how I'm going to do it. This is, a game plan. But I was more frequently losing the desire to live a life that felt so challenging and difficult. So when Shawna chose that, it was like cold water on my face. I remember hearing myself say the words, "She beat me to it." I didn't even know I was in that space until I said those words.
Yeah, that just came out of you. It was just so vulnerable. It just came right out of you.
And that for me that's never going to be an option. She took that option from me through her act, and I'll be forever grateful. It's horribly painful, but she woke me up in a way that I was sleeping for so deeply. I don't know what it would have taken it. So that act was my grace.
And it was at that point, we as a family, witnessing that debris and that devastation, we like did a proverbial pinky swear across the board that no one was going to do that. No one was going to take that option.
And further, we were going to find answers. No one that we loved was going to do that. I mean, I think we just intuitively knew this is our moment. This is our mission. This is, we're going to heal the world.
I want to ask you guys this because I've heard it with other suicide survivors, but I kind of want to know at the level that it affected you. And I'll tell you what mine was with kind of the PTSD after Shawna and being hypersensitive to like losing other members of your family. Did you guys experience that? Like where I remember I was, a newlywed pregnant but like, I think when my baby was born, I was even more hypersensitive because I was just still raw with losing someone so close to me. And you kind of never think that's going to happen to you. You know, it happens to other people. Mm-hmm. But when it actually happens to you, it kind of, it just sends out this signal now of like, oh, this is a possibility. And I was so hypersensitive to losing somebody. I remember Leland leaving for work some days. I didn't want him to leave because I was like, what if you die on the road? What if, and I want to if you guys experienced that, because I don't think I ever talked to you about that.
Well, I was definitely afraid of losing you guys before my kids or anything else. But then as my kids started to get older and I started to see signs of depression and anxiety in them with the family patterning, then that's when it really like mama bear clouds came out. I have got to get to the root of this. I have got to learn, because we all knew that it was, this is so hard to say. Like, I think the drugs killed her. I think there were so many layers and levels and whatever, but ultimately I think that was one of the reasons. I mean, her addiction and the illness and everything compounded. I just think the real Shawna was not there. And she didn't have tools. I wanted to find the tools. I wanted to sniff those out. I already had a degree in psychology. I learned nothing.
And it was a quest. It literally became a quest, at least it was for me, of and our lives depend on it to find solution.
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at my kids and then I'm going, okay, they're going to have kids and they're going to have kids and and I'm like, it's got to stop. I'll let you answer that, Taunia. But for me, I was Mrs. Utah at the time Shawna died. I was 3 weeks from passing on my title and I was knee deep. I was the director that year as well. And I was just knee deep. And when she died, it caught a little bit of media attention. The Utah Attorney General asked me to sit on the State Suicide Prevention Council and largely to address suicide survivors. So, Robin, what you shared about this is now an option. Like, I really dove into that. I was on a board with because at the time Utah had the highest suicide rate per capita, and I was diving into the copycat phenomenon with suicide survivors, and it was the same exact thing you said, Robin. If someone has done it, it now becomes a viable option for you on a subconscious level, especially if you're in pain. So when you see people in pain, I don't know about you guys, but I am like a watchdog with those people because I know that they could go there because it's just such an out of the blue thing when someone can take their own life. But I really dove into research what those precursors are, and it doesn't have much to do with genetics. It has much to do with situational, and has someone else in your family or a close friend committed suicide. And even having that legacy in our family. I mean, my kids were raised knowing their aunt committed suicide. So when I start to see them have that genetic, propensity, I'm going, no, I'm going to do whatever it takes to abolish this. And that has been honestly my life quest. I'm obsessed with it. And I will not rest until, the tools we found have been super powerful. And there's a lot of work that can go even deeper with that. So I will not rest until I feel like I have a complete view of what has been taking down my family members. Taunia, what have you experienced as a trigger around that?
I have two things that come to mind around that. The first one being how it affected my experience in relationships, meaning I now looked at people that I loved as, is this the last time I'm going to see you? And a wave of panic would flood over me. And like Robin was saying, I didn't want that person to go or to hang up, or I just had a need to like, what's if this was the last time I was going to see him, kind of a sense. And it was not a good feeling. The other thing it did for me is like I was saying, it was a mirror for me how close I was. And that's when I began being more proactive in a deeper search for myself. What will it take for this to heal? It felt like it never, ever got the breathing room to be healed. It just kept surfacing. I'd manage it, and I'd be functional. Then it would take over again. And there was this new desire of, no, there's options. Suicide's not one of them. Leaving this world isn't one of them by my hand. But what is out there that I haven't yet explored? And that's when I rolled up my sleeves for my own journey.
Yeah.
That there's other ways.
Yeah. So let's just kind of wrap up with that, because and this might have to be a two-part thing, because we could talk for hours about what we each have learned in our own journeys about mental health, emotional health, familial patterning. To back up, I can't remember, it was the early, maybe mid-90s actually, when our family, because of the really, really pervasive, our pedigree chart is literally cloistered with suicide and mental illness. And so our family became part of a large longitudinal study done through the Utah State University and Duke University. And our mom happened to be a phlebotomist drawing blood for the study. So because of our family history, a lot of our cousins and our grandparents and aunts and uncles and ourselves included, we had our blood drawn so that we could be part of the study that located the chromosomal patterning for familial depression. So I need to do a little digging. It's been 20 years or something since they've done that, and I'm really curious about where the study's at. But anyway, um, I'm sure all of you guys who are listening to this can relate to different aspects of it, whether it's a friend or family member or whatever that you've lost, and it kind of became the catalyst to you going, no, maybe it was you, maybe you said no more. For me personally, and then I'll let Robin and Taunia speak to this. For me personally, yeah, it was like looking at my kids going, no. And it was one thing to lose a sister, which was absolutely horrific. It's a part of me that will never completely heal. It's just something that's just always present with me, losing her. I had an experience when maybe about 7 years after she took her life, where I heard this song by Christina Aguilera called Hurt on the radio. And I was like, oh my gosh, Shawna loved her voice and the words. Then I started listening to the words, and it was about, even though it was for her father who had died, it was like Shawna was trying to tell me that she was hurt for me because I was hurt for her. And I just got it. I got the message. And then I was like, don't cry, don't cry. I went into the grocery store and I heard the exact same song when I was getting groceries, and I lost it. I didn't even pay for my groceries. I ran out of the store, got in my car, sobbed all the way home. By the time I walked in the door, I was having a full-on panic. I've never had a panic attack, that I had done so many suck-up sobs that I could not breathe. My fingers were stiff. My face was numb. I could barely move. My muscles had gone completely stiff. My husband was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And my kids were already in bed, thank goodness. But I'm just saying, like, that is what happens when you experience loss trauma that you cannot process at the time. Because what I was thinking is, it finally hit me 7 years later that she was not coming back in that moment. And because I just couldn't process it at the time. And then I was dealing with all of this guilt. What if I had done this? What if I had asked her more questions when she called me that morning? What if? What did I not tell her? And when she came through with that song, it was almost like she was saying, hey, I get it. I know you love me. Don't have any regrets. This is my choice. This was my choice. But my own journey after that, the trajectory of my entire life changed when we lost Shawna. Just like you mentioned, Robin, I knew I don't go to her grave very much. I don't like to go there. I go there on Memorial Day, and that's pretty much it. And it's 15 minutes from my house. But I remember one day, and the grass was still fresh from the funeral, and they had lowered her in, and I had gone, and I promised her out loud that I would be her voice. And I've never quite felt such a distinctive clarity around my path. It was to be a voice for people who were suffering from emotional, mental, or generational issues. And I haven't stopped since then. And it's been, for me, I don't want to glorify her choice. we're not trying to get sympathy, right? We're not, when I tell it now, I can largely remove myself from the emotion, but I think people need to understand that this has been such a pivotal piece to why I'm doing what I'm doing. That now, the tools that we have now, we do a lot with, I personally have done a lot of research around multisensory healing and the sensory pathways and emotional debris that accumulates and how you clear that out. Nothing I learned getting my psych degree. Nothing. None of it was very helpful. Other than Carl Jung. I love him. But I personally went outside of the box because I had been trained in the box. I'd been trained to stay in a box. And it was almost like God, Spirit, were talking to me saying, the answers are out of the box. Think that God's ways are not man's ways. Like, just open yourself up. And so I learned some really weird stuff that I'm still processing, that, hey, it's on a shelf. But when I gave myself permission to look at what was being sent to me and not judge it or label it as weird or woo-woo or foo-foo, because it wasn't coming in a scientifically approved package, that's when the healing really started. And that has made all of the difference with how I'm parenting, how I'm coaching, how I'm teaching, because pioneering efforts aren't born of people staying safe or comfortable or worrying about what other people think. They're born of getting clues from the universe and boldly stepping onto a path and going, I'm going to try this. What do I have to lose? I'm losing my family members anyway. And that's sort of how I looked at it. And so where I've stepped into now in the wholeness wellness model is basically like, I know there's more answers coming. When I self-published a book on depression after Shawna had been gone about a year and a half. And I remember interviewing that Duke University psychiatrist who was also an MD and an internist gastroenterologist. And she told me, she said, Cherie, there's so many more neurotransmitters that have not been discovered by science, especially those that reside in the gut. And science has largely, the scientific models we have now about depression and mental illness largely focus on the mind brain. And most of our immunity and most of our neurochemical functioning happens in the gut. I'm like, they did not, I already had a psych degree by this point and I didn't know that. So it's just sent me on this whole path of looking at the whole body. So that's my, and I've seen some miraculous things happen with people, both in my, which later became a business and a path for us, Robin, most particularly with doTERRA and our journey in that organization and being able to go out and travel all over the world, honestly, and hold emotion workshops and share a sister story. But let's go to you, Robin, and talk about your passion around it, and then Taunia will go to you. Where you've been able to take Shawna's loss, the loss of Shawna, and the prospect of the family patterning continuing, and how you've now transmuted that into your own path.
Yeah, so I would say, because Shawna was 10 years older than me, when she took her life at 34 and I was 24, I have a nursing baby, so if you hear a little baby,
I just heard her. She's so cute.
But that was always, Cherie, very similar in the sense of losing Shawna. And I already mentioned this. Before I even had my baby and I was pregnant, my first experience as a mama bear came out, and I just refused for me to go down that road. But I also knew I was pregnant with a girl, and I was like, no. And it was after Kennedy, my first, was born. And always, we have 8 children, 4 adopted, but whether it was biological or adopted, there was always that period where I really felt the adversary working on me, and I felt those the DNA triggering, and there's always been this door that I could open and that I could always see going down that way. And thank God that I felt the urgency to find some solutions when I did, because I could always go down that road. But I have found certain tools, essential oils being a huge piece, but nutrition, making sure I have certain nutrients in my body makes a huge difference. Understanding self-care, something that wasn't greatly modeled to me, that I had to learn to do and say no, and things of this nature. These all played into a part for me that I learned. But I do remember when I turned 34 and I had 5 children, that was a tough year, because I couldn't not see how easy it could have been to go down that road if I was not diligently and intentionally working.
Because Shawna was 34 and had 5 kids when she died.
Yeah. And I just remember feeling so much more compassion for her. B, extreme sadness that she did not have the tools that I did. And D, also a sense of a guilt, really. Why am I the lucky one? Why
survivor guilt?
Why do I get to have these tools? Why do I get to avoid this? Why did she not have that? Because I know I could have, this is in my mind, I could have saved her with these tools that I have now. So that was a really hard to battle, but I am grateful for Shawna. I would never want to live through that again, but she really did save our family. I firmly believe that she really did save the family. And like you, I don't want to glorify her act, but it was the cold water in the face for a lot of us of, we cannot have this continue. Things have to change.
Yeah, I think we all kind of look at our lives. There was like before Shawna died versus after, like that was the moment where everything changed in terms of the urgency to get answers and help. And Taunia, you were on almost as many or more medications than Shawna was at the time of her death. So walk us through a little bit of how, because like you had the most transformational, like you talk a lot about the 5 divorces, but like you had to divorce yourself to a point to come back and really claim your soul sovereignty and your healing path and mission apart from the family patterning.
Shawna was a catalyst. And at that stage in my life, she was a catalyst for me personally getting balanced and finding other choices than being so heavily medicated. And my dynamic, my clearing of a pattern around relationships, that didn't get cleared until much later. But it, like you said, it began with me. What I was doing was I had been divorced from myself. And my search for love and connection was being directed and misplaced. It was outside of myself, and I was choosing men unconsciously who ultimately weren't healthy for me. So it came down to her act was, there comes a time when the pain is so great, it either births bravery or a breakdown. And for me, the inspiration came to wake up and my eyes were opened also to the impact of staying ashamed of my messes and not wanting to be perceived as crazy and incapable, incompetent. So I stayed silent. But then, what if something I personally navigated through could inspire somebody else's next brave step? People are literally choosing out of this world because they feel so deeply alone and flawed and trapped and without hope. And it was a call for me to get my own life in order. I didn't know it at the time, but it would be a call so that as I got my own life in order, I could make better choices. I could interrupt patterns. I could literally be healed in so many ways I never thought possible. I didn't have to live the path that I was on. I didn't have to continue a life that on autopilot. So today, that's what I get to do, is I get to be on the other side of the messes. Not that I'm absent of pain or any of the other messes in life. I'm not absent of it, but I control my journey. I choose my journey. And my message is showing up for other people in my own transparency. Look how messy life can get. Let me show you my messes. And in some odd way, it can kind of inspire people because they go, well, at least I'm not as skewed as that journey. Does that make sense?
Especially postpartum, because, even still, there's so many women who they have a baby, and if it's not, clinical postpartum depression, but even they feel chained down, their life isn't what it was, or, all the different emotions and things that come with that women cannot talk about, that new moms cannot talk about, or seasoned moms can't talk to each other about. That needs to change too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes me reflect too on, we can never judge someone's messes. We can never know what lives in their mind and heart, what experiences they've had, the perceptions they've formed around those experiences, the chemistry and the neural pathways that have formed around those experiences. Yes, I have 2 adopted children, and both of their birth mothers have been diagnosed bipolar and were suicidal at the time of their pregnancies. So, like Robin, this is not something that I'm just, oh, this is my family patterning biologically. I seem to attract it into my space, even through adoption, and then also through many of the classes and workshops I do. I have yet to hold a class wherein I don't ask the question, hey, who in here has been affected by mental illness, suicide, or, somebody who's not been served by traditional treatment models? Literally every hand comes up every single time. This is the plague of our day. And when we're looking at Shawna being the beans or the line in the sand or the splash of cold water in the face where we all woke up to it, because it hit so very close to home. I think collectively as sisters, we just almost feel a responsibility to share what we've learned. Taunia, you have a whole thing on detoxing from medications, and now you do life coaching, and you have this beautiful pillar model. Why don't you tell us what that is? It starts with aware or awake, right?
Yeah, I call it the 4 pillars of transformation. As I keep having to do a restart on my life or go through transformations, I started to see a pattern, and it was awaken. You can't change what you can't see. Then you choose. Awaken, explore. What are the options? And then you choose. That's the 3rd pillar. And the 4th one is you be. You be that. And here's the thing. It's like being messy is a part of life. It's not a life sentence. And if you don't like where your life is at, you have the divine right to change course. That is so freeing to know that. You don't have to live your label.
Because I think the pervasive sort of state that a person who is suicidal is in is hopelessness. It's too painful to live because they cannot foresee it getting better. There's nothing in front of them that would give them hope that it could be any different. And it's just, they'd rather cease to exist than to live that way. So
there's the depression part. And there's also, I want to speak to the part of anxiety. I've dealt less with feeling depressed and more with anxiety. It is so exhausting to manage the anxiety that it can trip you into a depression, but it's more like an utter exhaustion. Like, here's one more day. Even sometimes here's one more hour that I have to navigate and tread water through. And you're just exhausted by it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, Taunia. I think anxiety, I don't get anxiety in the tradition, in the criterion, DSM-3 or whatever. I don't get that. But I have seen some of my kids go through that, and it's miserable. It's absolutely, and I think it's kind of not a trendy thing. That's a horrible thing to say, but I mean, at least teenagers today are talking about their anxiety and depression. At least they're, it's almost like commonplace for this generation of millennials and Generation Zers, whatever they are, to talk openly. Oh, I've got my anxieties up today or whatever on social media, and in their friend groups. So in a way that's healthy, because there was a great stigma, even 10, 15 years ago, there was a huge stigma around even talking about this. And so that gives some encouragement there. I think too, just the vulnerability. And part of the reason I wanted us to share our story is because, I've been through the valley of depression. Taunia, you've been on a journey. Robin, you probably had seasons where things felt hopeless, and it's very much, again, very much present with us. And not because I think that we kind of quipped that we were going to save the world, but I want to save my sphere. And by save, I know you can't save anyone and you can't fix them and you can't heal them. But I want to be the means by which, or the mechanism by which people find answers that they aren't getting in some of our more common traditional treatment models. I do have a 22-day depression cleanse group I'm starting that will probably be an ongoing thing that I'll do, several times a year. I think when people are suffering, they need something they can grab, like hurry and grab, like they need something now. I always call that an emotional emergency kit. We should have something at the ready that we can see or smell or taste or touch that grounds us back into our body. Taunia, you had mentioned disassociation being commonplace for you when you were faced with precarious situations, because that was a survival mechanism for you so that you could be. And to speak to that, I think that's more pervasive than we know. I think that most of us are asleep. Most people are asleep to their own power, and they're walking around living and existing and surviving instead of, oh my gosh, my birthright is to thrive and find joy and be happy and feel alive and feel connected and experience everything this world has to offer, and participate in my relationships and be here. So when we talk about staying in the body, I learned a lot about that in yoga, but when I'm telling someone to stay here and be in their body, I don't mean don't die. I mean, be in your body, live your life, find your joy, find what lights you up and do it. And Taunia, you kind of talked about that too. It's one of the components to healing is not just using tools that could help your senses or whatever, or to, tap into the subconscious in new ways, but to find what lights you up and do it. I can't imagine if I didn't have a medium of expression, not just with this podcast. I mean, this is a new thing, but like if I couldn't then go out and try to take what I've learned and regurgitate it or bring other people to that for me has been super therapeutic. So we've talked about a lot. And I really appreciate you guys hanging in there on this. It's definitely turning into a 2-part. I'm sure we could continue to discuss the finer points of what we've learned in our journey. I'm super grateful for you both and for the presence and support and love that you have always extended to me throughout my life. I love our family. I love what we've learned. I love all the messiness and all of the fun, all of it. I wouldn't trade my family for anyone or anything.
Yeah. Ditto.
So we'll keep fighting the fight. We'll keep sharing and doing what we do. And I hope for those of you who are listening that may be feeling hopeless, because I do attract this a lot. Just know that, and Taunia referenced this, like you have the power within you to make things different. And if you can't see the forest for the trees or the storm, you can't see your way through the storm to the sunshine, just know that there's hope and there's healing. And sometimes the deepest lessons you learn are in those moments where it does feel hopeless. And all that you can do is ask for the tools, however you define creator, God, Father in heaven, Mother in heaven, angels, spirit, higher power, whatever that is for you. Taunia mentioned there was something outside of her that came through when she was in her abusive situation with her husband and said, you do not have to live like this. And I would echo that for each of you. The answers are outside of you, but the answers are already in front of you as well. So just keep trudging along on the journey, but also realize that it's not just about surviving. It's about having a beautiful life of hope and healing and wholeness, operating from the paradigm that you already are whole. You just have to remember that and come back to the power that lives inside of you and the wisdom of the ages that lives within you to find and access that light and that healing. Thank you to my sisters, Robin Jones and Taunia Cherie, for hanging in there on this really tough discussion, but I think needful one. You can continue to be updated on the release of the podcasts I have coming up here in quick succession on my launch week. I will explore so many different topics that I feel are relevant for the women of our day. This really is a pivotal time in history for the feminine, and there's so much happening energetically and spiritually and emotionally and physically that we need each other as women to connect in and be a community by validating, supporting one another in our journeys. So you can go to my website, womenseekingwholeness.com, as well as cherieburton.com to continue to get updates on this podcast and get freebies as well. And I hope that you will tell your friends about this because holy cow, just put on your seatbelt. There's some really cool episodes coming up.